I'm a behavior analyst. I think that kind of goes without saying. And I am one of the founders of the BA Network, which we're going to talk about a little bit in a minute. But just a little bit of background. I have been providing telehealth services to children with Prader-Willi syndrome. So that's kind of where I get my telehealth experience. And we know that everyone is really stressed out about this topic right now. So we just wanted to try to bring some information to you guys on what this can look like, and just some strategies and resources to make this a little bit less stressful for everyone. Andrea, you're muted.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Hey everyone, so I'm Andrea. I'm actually a graduate student. I'm getting my PhD in behavior analysis. I am not a BCBA yet, but that is in the works right now. My background is actually where I met Kasey was working with individuals with Prader-Willi syndrome, but most of my experience is in developing and delivering health-related behavioral services. So helping people quit smoking and exercise more, things like that via telehealth, or via any other sort of remote monitoring kind of system. So we both come from very different backgrounds and are kind of approaching it from different perspectives, but the whole take home from today, we hope, is that we can provide enough examples and discussions, or different ideas or ways that you can kind of sort of modify what it is you're doing for a telehealth platform. So I'll go ahead and just get started on the next slide if it lets me. There we go. So like Kasey said, we're from the B8 Network, and the real focus of what the B8 Network is, it's a community, discussion, and connection. The whole idea is that we're creating a platform for our community of scientist practitioners to find answers through discussion and connection. The whole idea is that we want to create a platform for behavior analysts to safely ask your clinical questions while simultaneously trusting that the people actually responding to your questions are other experienced practitioners. So essentially, it's a forum. It's a forum where you can ask and answer each other's questions with additional relevant CEUs, templates, workshops, and other resources relevant to your current needs. Ultimately, our goal is just to help you practice confidently. So for today's presentation, the objectives essentially are this. Attendees will be able to determine appropriate goals that consider the present context, right? So our current situation with social isolation, as well as considering the abilities and preferences of clients and parents, with a particular emphasis on that. Also be able to describe procedures and assessments that are able to be conducted via telehealth, and apply the discussion to examples from your own practice. So really the purpose of today's talk is to give you some ideas as to what you can implement, how you could do it, and just help you create something to get you started. No one webinar is going to give you all the answers, but we hope that we'll give you enough examples so that you can go about sort of beginning it on your own. So feel free to ask questions and interrupt us throughout. We're going to keep an eye on the chat. The chat right now is just full of people's names, but after the names are done, we'll be able to answer questions. And we'll also have questions at time for questions at the end, I hope. Oh, we're also going to be sprinkling out the 3 keywords for the CEU quiz at the end, so make sure to look out for those. We'll make them as obvious as we can. So some questions we hope to help you answer. What should I target? How should I deliver therapy, or how am I supposed to go about doing it? How do I train caregivers, if that's the way you're going to go about it? This discussion is going to assume that you have already identified which technology you will use and have obtained the relevant consents. But if you haven't, I do suggest checking out actually this video, this daily BA video on the topic. Let me see if I can, I'll post it in the chat later, but it was a pretty good video that'll help you get started and kind of orients you towards all of the things you should take into consideration when setting up your telehealth practice.
They also give some really good resources as far as like informed consent and how that might look different in real-time services versus telehealth services. So we definitely recommend checking that out. So the first question when you're looking at providing telehealth services during a global pandemic is, what is socially valid during this global pandemic? So given all the new challenges, we pretty much are going to have to revisit our goals and decide what the most pressing aspects of our behavior plans are and what can kind of be put on hold until we're able to get back into a more normal service provision setting. So things to consider. First thing, social isolation. Both the parents and the kids are isolated, potentially lonely, probably all driving each other insane, and potentially nervous, afraid, concerned for relatives given what's going on. So that's just going to add a whole added level of stress to any type of program that you're trying to put in place. Also, parents are now responsible for care 24/7. So these are, if you are working with kids with autism, these are parents that are used to having their kids go to therapy, a million different therapies a day or clinic, or essentially they have a lot of support. And now, whether they're a single parent or it's a two-parent household, they're responsible not only for caring for their kid with disabilities, but also for taking care of all their other children as well as potentially older relatives. And so the burden of care has gone up about 500%. There's also limited resources. So parents, especially depending on where they are, if they're in a full lockdown situation, they might not be able to get usual reinforcer items. So if the kid's used to getting specific food items as reinforcers, those may not be available. And lots of places, shipping has slowed way down. So it's not even like you can order your Skittles off of Amazon and have them by tomorrow. And then there's also limited activities. So kids that are used to going to not only to therapies, but to gymnastics and to the park, they don't have any of these options, and they probably don't know how to self-entertain within the home setting. Excuse me, I don't have COVID, but I do have allergies. So then there's also just the complete lack of structure. Lots of people that are now quarantined have gone from, not just the kids, also the parents, have gone from a very structured environment, whether that be therapies or school or for the parents going to work, to an essentially completely unstructured. So the parents are probably going to need some help with that structuring aspect. And then behavior problems. So if you have kids that are used to having lots of support, lots of activities, lots of structure, and they've gone to an essentially non-structured environment where they're probably extremely bored and they don't know how to entertain themselves, you're going to get behavior problems. You also have parents that are much more stressed out than they normally would be. And that just increased level of stress is just going to act as an antecedent for behavior problems. And then also the level of functioning of the person that you're working with is probably going to dictate the type of service provision. So I work anywhere from kids who are 1.5 years to 2 years old, where the focus of my intervention is really going to be parent training. And I also work with adults in the community where I can potentially do some more direct services via telehealth. So what I'm trying to say is any of the resources we're giving you, we're not trying to give you a specific formula for your client. We're just trying to give you some resources to use, and then you have to, of course, adjust that to the individual. Okay, so with goal setting, there's 3 things you want to really think about with your goals. Is it attainable? Basically, does the parent have the time and the resources to implement this? Is the parent caring for 4 other children, and are we asking them to sit down and do 4 hours worth of work with their kid? Probably not attainable. Is it relevant? So will this specific goal help the client and the parent during this time? So this is not where we want the kid to be 10 years down the road. It's how can we help these parents survive the next 3 or 4 months when we're all locked in our houses? And then also timely. So when you're looking at your procedures and your goal setting, you really want to focus on things. Obviously, you don't want to abandon everything else you're working on, but you want to focus on something you're going to see results quickly, not only because the parents, you need to get that kind of buy-in from the parents, but also because the situation has changed so drastically that we have to make sure that we're choosing things that are socially significant during this specific time period. Okay, so ways in which we can best help the families. And we're going to go over all of these in depth, don't worry. Structure and scheduling. So helping them figure out how to structure the day, not only to work on skill acquisition, behavior reduction, but also just to keep their kids entertained so that we don't have behavior problems. Comprehensive and cohesive systems of reinforcement. So we want to give them some overall structure of reinforcement that they can use to motivate their children to keep their house in general control and to reduce behavior, to prevent and to reduce behavior. We also want to make sure that we ask the families how we can best help them, and we're extremely mindful of their limitations. So that's usually like when I start a telehealth session with any of my kids, pretty much the first thing I do is I ask the parents what their overreaching needs are and how I can help them right away. Like, what are the things we need to work on right now? And I'm sure you all have done that at the beginning, like especially if you work in the homes. This is all things you've addressed with the families as long time ago. However, I guarantee you those needs have changed drastically since they all got locked in their houses. And then you want to try to build skills training activities into daily routines. So you want to make it as minimal effort for the parents. However, also choosing things like leisure skills and physical activity, they're going to help to prevent behavior problems and keep the kids engaged while the parents are able to attend to other things like providing services via telehealth. Okay, so just real quick, we gave some examples of some appropriate and inappropriate goals. So appropriate goals might be to give the parents a way to identify reinforcers. Like we said before, you might not have all the items available that you used to have, so helping the parents to do that is going to be a good goal. Inappropriate might be having a really busy parent who's caring for 3 other children try to implement hours of discrete trial instruction. That's probably just not going to be something they can manage, and you really can't blame them. Train the parents to use preferred activities to increase compliance would be appropriate. Train parents to implement backwards chaining or complex and infrequent skills is probably not something we necessarily need to target this second. Create a schedule and identify methods to help the client keep the schedule. Great goal, helps the parents, helps the kids. However, creating a strict schedule with activities that are difficult to implement, or maybe creating an activity with a high functioning kiddo who likes to have choice in there, that might not be the best choice. That's just gonna predispose to more behavior problems. And then implement antecedent manipulations to present or reduce the severity of problem behavior. Emphasis on prevent there if we can would be very appropriate. Inappropriate might be implement a strict behavior reduction protocol that involves FR1 schedule delivery of consequences, or implement a strict behavior protocol that the parent has to run an extinction burst or something that's just not going to be manageable for them.
So the take-home point really is just that it all depends on your client, your parents, and what they are able to do, what they are willing to do, and what is a priority at the present time. So first CEU keyword, pepper. Write that down.
When I picked these.
Sorry?
I think I was cooking when I picked the keywords.
Yeah, probably hungry. Yeah, so just make sure you write that one down. Okay, so for preference and reinforcer assessments, the whole idea is, again, like Kasey was saying, that resources might be limited right now. So we have to focus on what we can do. So what resources are available, right? Items that were previously identified as reinforcers, they might not be available. So it's probably likely you're going to have to conduct a new preference assessment to help identify reinforcers available in the family home. So keep in mind to try and choose an assessment that's easy to train, easy to implement. Could be PSPA, MSWO, or free operant. And really think of trying to translate these methods and translate these things to the home environment. The whole idea is to minimize the amount of effort required by the parent, but try to identify ways to actually help them out in the long run as well. Also keep in mind that kids will be at home 24 hours a day for the next several weeks. So it could be, might be tough to combat satiation. So given that, we do suggest implementing a rotation of reinforcers to prevent satiation and changing these out every so often. So perhaps don't bring out all of the toys at the same time unless you really need to implement some sort of quick and effective behavior change. But try to hold out a little bit and change the rotation of toys every so often. Also, the PREMAC principle, it's beautiful, it's great. Consider which regular daily activities are reinforcers, such as eating, and place these activities after low preferred activities, such as self-care skills, if you are creating a daily schedule. So actually, to help you all get started on this, we did create a guide for parents to implement an MSWO, which includes a task analysis and a data sheet, all in parent-friendly language. So if you would like a copy of this, please feel free to email us at info@banetwork.org, and we'll give you a copy of that.
It's very colorful. Just another thought on this. So it's really pretty easy to train parents to do preference assessments over telehealth, especially if you pretty much just send them a task analysis. And you can even set your laptop up somewhere in the background, kind of hiding, so you can watch to make sure that they're doing it appropriately. The easiest ones to do, I think multiple stimulus without replacement is the easiest to do, but people seem to prefer paired stimulus. But sorry, you got the task analysis on the MSWO because I like it better. But something else to consider is for kids that don't accept the removal of reinforcer objects. Like, for example, if you have a bigger kiddo who every time you take away the toy, they smack you in the face. Parents might be able to do something like a free operant or like a duration assessment where they just put all the items out and see how long the kids interact with them. Just keep in mind that removing the objects might not be the most ideal situation for the parents to be in. So if that's the case, choose some type of preference or reinforcer assessment that doesn't require the parents to take the items away.
Yeah, and the whole idea with this too, it's not necessarily that the parent is going to be just every day conducting an MSWO without you or anything. The idea is to kind of guide them through this, especially if you're doing like a free operant. There's no reason you wouldn't be able to have the parents set up the laptop or the camera like in some corner of the room, and then be able to observe the kiddo sort of playing with all the different toys in their toy room. Getting creative with little things like that will also be really helpful.
And also, you may have to help the parents choose the items to use in the assessment, because they've gone from being able to access 20 million reinforcers from the grocery store and the toy store and everything else to whatever they're stuck in the house with. So things like telling parents to keep a journal of what toys their kids play with for the longest, or what food items they choose the most, what snacks they ask for, just to give the parents a general idea of what do we even put in this assessment. Because they might say, well, the iPad and that's it. And the iPad is not gonna get us through 2 months of social isolation. So even sometimes if the iPad or the computer or some type of technology is the main reinforcer, you can have the parents break it down. So if there's 6 games that they like to play on the iPad, we can figure out which games are more preferred, which ones are more likely to function as reinforcers, and also just use that as a way to rotate your reinforcers. So if all you have is the iPad, or you only have the iPad and a few other things, how you can break that down so that you're not getting satiation on that one game. Okay, so I think probably every single parent that has a kid with disabilities is going to experience at least some type of behavior problem during this social isolation. Probably mostly lots of it is just going to be kid behavior, but given the added stress and just kind of the added risk of not having any resources or support, we want to be able to give the families some basic system of behavior control. So the lack of support and the absence of regular activities, as well as the increased confinement, as well as being with your siblings 24/7, which anybody who has a brother or sister knows that will make you nuts. This is all going to predispose the occurrence of behavior. So tools that we can give parents to just generally control behavior are going to be things like token economy. If you think a token economy, maybe the kid's too young for a token economy, they don't get it. Simple things like DRO or DRI or DRL. These are all going to be really good strategies to teach the parents early, just so that they can keep themselves and their kids safe. For some reason, it's not showing me the bottom of the slide. There we go. Okay, so my favorite thing to do, especially if you have a kid that is going to understand that, is just going to be a token economy. You can do a basic DRO token economy. So every 2 hours, the kid gets some reinforcer, maybe it's a food reinforcer, or 50 minutes of the iPad for 2 hours without having any behavior problems. That would probably be the easiest thing to implement. We're going to talk about this a little farther, but you can also build a much more complex system of reinforcement with a token system if you're trying to do some specific skill acquisition training, or if you're trying to like increase specific behaviors that are going to assist the parents and to keep the kids safe. So token economy is honestly my favorite, but you can do things that are much more simple for kids that it's just not acceptable for. Try to pick something that's going to be familiar to the kid. So if you've already been working with a token economy, even if they only get the token economy for the 2 or 3 hours of session in the afternoon, try to use that system that they already understand and just expand it, because that's going to mean that you're able to get control of the behavior much more quickly because the system is familiar to them. You can also use stickers or marks on a whiteboard. I honestly really like whiteboards because they're hard to tear and or break and or destroy. And if the kid gets upset and wipes everything off the whiteboard, you can just write it back on there. So I think, and that's also something that the parents are likely to have in the home. So if you don't already have a token system in place, perhaps you were seeing this kid in the clinic and now the parents are home without resources, a whiteboard or even a big sheet of paper or a chalkboard or a piece of printer paper can all function as a token system that the parents, with items that the parents are already going to have in the house, so they don't have to go try to get something. And then try to just get control very quickly. So if you have if you have a family that's not really experiencing any behavior problems, then you probably don't need anything that's too crazy or too dense. You could maybe do a daily reinforcer or something like that. However, if the parents are already starting to see some problem behaviors, start with a really dense schedule and fade as you can. It's much better to intervene with the behavior problems before they become severe and they get reinforced. So if we can get a system of reinforcement in place really quickly that can get control, we can prevent a lot of behavior problems down the line. And then again, like a daily duro or something similar can help prevent the occurrence of novel behavior or like low frequency occurring problem behavior, especially if it's a kid that's high functioning and can work on that lean of a schedule of reinforcement.
So another thing to add to that one too, the beauty with the token economy is that it is a generalized reinforcer, right? And although the ideal situation is that you'll be able to, let's say you have a new problem behavior and you're able to actually conduct some kind of functional analysis to figure out what the function is and implement some function-based intervention. Given all the limitations, it may be difficult to do that. So again, the idea with a generalized reinforcer is that you're able to use it to increase or decrease, just implement some kind of behavior change. If you're not sure what the function is, if you can't appropriately get control of the behavior, and using some other method. We will be talking about trying to conduct FAs or FBAs later on, but just keep that in mind as well, that it's another sort of emergency, given emergency situation, it's okay to use this sort of generalized emergency method. So as you see, as you've been seeing, we do recommend, if possible, to provide the parents with some kind of schedule that works with them. So some things that you should include in that schedule would be educational activities, right? So tailored, of course, to the skills of your client, but maybe they're in homeschool doing online schooling, or maybe they're just still figuring out their ABCs. Just implement some kind of some time blocks that are appropriate for that. Implement breaks. Both parents need breaks and the kiddo needs breaks. It doesn't make sense, and I keep on seeing it everywhere online, these beautifully decorated and beautiful schedules for kiddos, and it's just back to back to back nonstop. If you look at your own schedule during this social distancing period, like I have Instagram breaks, right? Like I have moments after I do whatever amount of work that I just sit on my couch and go on Instagram. So it's okay to also implement breaks for your kiddo. They don't have to be active the full, I don't know how many hours they're awake.
There are lots of tasks in my schedule.
Yeah. Also implement any necessary daily living skills. So that's the it can be frustrating trying to deliver, trying to continue the interventions that you were doing previously. But the beautiful thing, if there's a silver lining to this, is that now you're in the home setting, and perhaps you had a parent that wasn't willing to do telehealth, and now because of the circumstances, they are able to do or willing to do telehealth. This is an opportunity to target these skills that are only relevant in the home setting. So if parent wants to get kiddo to start, or adolescent, teenager, whatever age, they're trying to get their child to start helping around the house. Like, man, I really wish my child would help me out with loading the dishwasher. This is a perfect opportunity to try to target skills like that, because you're in the home setting, you're in the place where it's relevant, and it's relevant now more than ever. So definitely find, times to be able to build up these necessary daily living skills that are going to increase the independence of the kiddo and help the parent out with just easing the load off of them a little bit. Chores are also a necessary daily living skill. No one likes them, but we need to do them. As well as leisure time. It's okay, kind of like what I was saying before with the breaks, like it's okay to schedule in time to just hang out, or a lot of people also with self-isolation, if you look at your own schedules, I started baking more. I wasn't baking before. The first thing I did, I don't know why, it was like a meme on Instagram, I baked a banana bread. Half of the world baked banana bread, but it's just, you start picking up these random little leisure skills. It's appropriate replacement behaviors for whatever behaviors you were doing previously, and it's a socially relevant thing to schedule, if that makes sense. So of course, also schedule in reinforced delivery times, especially if those are activities, or if they're contingent on certain behaviors that have to be occurring before. And also, I'm going to be a little bit on a soapbox with this, some physical activity time. So the whole thing with physical activity, kiddos, individuals with developmental disabilities, and just kids in general right now, they're at an increased risk for sedentary behavior and just low physical activity. So, you're at home, you're not going out, you don't have recess time or playground time like you had before. Maybe us as adults, you don't have the gym anymore. Everyone's a lot more sedentary right now. So I do recommend implementing in the schedule some kind of physical activity. Don't have to go crazy with it. Keep it within parents' ability, child's ability. Could be anything from just time in the backyard, running around, or yoga, some biking, or even walking the dog. But some kind of physical activity would be pretty nice. There have been some published research on the topic, actually, implementing different physical activity type of interventions. So the McIver et al. 2009, that's actually an assessment for physical activity to identify the different types of physical activity that kiddos engage in. And it's very, very detailed. It's not just like running, it's playing with this one toy in a physical way. So that's a good one if you want an assessment. But there also is some interesting research on using physical activity as an antecedent manipulation, which decreases the occurrence of problem behavior. So the first article, the 83 article, it's an old one, but they did look at pretty moderate to vigorous physical activity on the occurrence of problem behavior. But then the more recent 2013 Morrison et al. Article, they look at the impact of physical activity on reducing automatically reinforced behavior, so automatically maintained behavior. So that was a pretty interesting article as well. It kind of just goes to show that it could be effective, not just in, not just planning physical activity for the sake of physical activity, which I do think is important, but also just relevant for getting behavior control.
All right, so another thing that you want to make sure you build into your schedule is, again, using the PREMAC principle as much as possible, because since we have limited reinforcers, the last thing we want to have to do is provide a reinforcer for getting out of bed on time, for brushing your teeth, for making your bed, for taking your medication, et cetera, because then by 9:30 a.m., you're not going to have any reinforcers. So try to help the parents identify what activities are preferred by the kids or highly likely to occur, or however you want to phrase it. And again, that might be just running through the day with them and saying, what do your kids do independently without being asked? Probably for lots of kids, that's going to be eat breakfast. So then you just build into the schedule. We get up at this time, we brush our teeth, we make our bed, and then we eat breakfast. And we're not going to eat breakfast until we've brushed our teeth, and that doesn't really make sense. Probably you want to eat breakfast first, but you know what I mean. So we have to do X, Y, and Z activity before we do something we prefer. Maybe that's something as simple as go out for a walk in the backyard. Or around the neighborhood, or feed the cat, or whatever it is that the kids like to do, but we have to do X, Y, and Z first, and try to identify that as much as possible within the day, and make some of those less preferred, but not necessarily aversive skills contingent on being able to complete whatever that preferred skill is. So maybe you don't really love putting your clothes in the laundry basket at night, but you're probably gonna go ahead and do that if you're told you have to do that before dinner. However, if you're told you have to do 3 hours of homework online, you're probably going to say dinner's not worth it. I don't really care. So making sure that we're saving, at least that's what I would say, making sure that we're saving the really highly potent reinforcers for the really unpreferred activities, or the really necessary activities like taking your medication or doing some type of safety skill. And then the slightly unpreferred activities, but things that could really help parents out if the kids either complete them with minimal prompting, or even complete them independently, which would be absolutely great. Try to build that in before some other preferred activities. Also, try to build in breaks for the parents at regular intervals. What that might look like is placing like leisure time or reinforcement time. For example, if a kid's working towards time watching TV or time on the iPad, you might say, okay, well, we're gonna work on homework from 12 till 2 p.m. For every 30 minutes of homework, you earn 5 minutes of iPad time, however you want to put it. And then at the end of that period, the kid gets all 20 minutes or 30 minutes of iPad time, and that gives mom or dad or whoever's providing the services a chance to go and take a break, maybe take a shower, just to breathe for 5 minutes and not have to continue the high level of supervision and prompting that's probably required for most of the day. Also, if you can try to program in some leisure time in the evening to allow the parents to relax without having any demands placed on them, that would be great. And then if you are lucky enough to have 2 parents who are able to provide care, consider scheduling them in shifts. So maybe mom has to do telehealth sessions in the morning, so dad's going to be responsible from wake up until 1:00 p.m. And then dad has to work in the evening, or dad needs a break or a nap or a beer. So mom's going to be responsible for 1 p.m. until later in the evening, and then the parents shift off later in the evening. If you have a kid that requires a lot of assistance, a lot of prompting, maybe has behavior problems, if it's an option, creating shorter shifts and having the parents switch off. So mom takes 2 hours, dad takes 2 hours, even grandma, whoever's available, older siblings, put them on the schedule. And then again, if you are lucky enough to have older siblings who are willing to help, making sure you're programming in some type of reinforcer for that older sibling so that they keep assisting rather than just telling them that they have to do it. Also, try to program in as much flexibility and choice for both the children and the caregivers. So nobody wants to be told, you have to do this from at 9, and you have to do this at 10, and you have to do this at 11. So giving some choice. Do we want to do our work on our whatever skills training we have to do before lunch or after lunch? Do we want to, for our exercise of the day, do we want to go for a walk? Do we want to play in the yard? Do we want to get on the PlayStation and play a dance game, or whichever one has the dance games? I don't know about these things. But just giving not only the kids options, because the more, we all know choice is a reinforcer. So the more choice you have within your schedule, or the kids have within the schedule, the more likely they are to comply to the things they don't really want to do. And then also programming in choice for the parents. So if you're asking the parents to do work on some type of specific skills training 4 or 5 days a week, or you're asking them to do it for a specific period of time a day, allowing them to choose what they want to work on, when they want to work on it, if they have a day that's just super stressful, pushing it to the next day, trying to build in as much flexibility as you can so you're not pretty much causing more stress with your schedule than you're solving. And then again, making sure the scheduling is age appropriate. So if you have a really little kid with a short attention span, you might have to be scheduling something new and exciting to do every 30 minutes. However, if you have a 16-year-old who is mad that they can't see their friends and mad that they now have to do school online and pretty much mad about everything, creating much larger intervals and building in a lot more choice is going to be much more appropriate. So we also made 2 example schedules. It was 1 example schedule and Dre didn't like that, so she made it 2 example schedules. So this is pretty much, we have Sally and Tom, I think. Go back to Sally. Yeah. Okay, so Sally is an example of a person that a token system is not necessarily going to work with. Maybe she's a little bit younger and she just doesn't get what a token system is. So here we have pretty much programmed in a reinforcer for every activity. Again, trying to take into account things like let's have teeth brush, getting dressed, making bed before we have breakfast. And then also we've identified things like dolls are a preferred activity or preferred item. So for good behavior, we can play with our dolls at breakfast. Also trying to build in little things that can help the parents, not just so that they can help the parents, but so that the parents have additional reason to provide reinforcement and praise for the kids. Because the better relationship that you can help to prompt or foster between the parents and the kids at this time is going to just help the stress level in the house altogether. So something easy like putting your dishes in the sink. You don't have to wash it. You don't have to do anything fancy. You just have to put them in the sink, and then we can get praise for that. That's a combination of like prompting an appropriate skill and also prompting the parents to remember, we know you're super stressed out, but whenever you can, let's catch them being good. Let's provide as much praise as we can for like the small appropriate activity, so that when we have a big behavior problem, there's still a good relationship and we can move forward from that. And then choosing high potency reinforcers like M&Ms for things like homeschooling or whatever skills training or whatever it is that they have to do. And then making sure you program in lots of breaks. So we have after breakfast, we play outside, then we homeschool for a bit, then we take a walk, then we homeschool, then we have leisure time. And also you can't see the bottom of this schedule, but I always try to program in leisure time or reinforcer time or something along those lines in times when I know the parents are going to have to do stuff. So if you know mom is the person who usually cooks dinner, try to give her some time where she doesn't have to supervise around 5:30 or 6:30 or whatever time, so that she has some time to prepare without also having to supervise or do skills training or provide some type of leisure activity. She doesn't need to be doing 20 things at once. And then can we see Tom?
Yeah.
So Tom is an example of somebody where you are using a token system for. Hopefully he already knows how to work the token system. Probably he knows how to work the token system better than mom does. So you just pretty much take what you have working with him and you rework it so that it can work in the home. So I like to make schedules with the tokens on them. So we just say you're earning 2 tokens for this, 5 tokens for this, whatever. And then we just keep the running total in the right column, because that makes it really easy for the parents and the kids to refer to. And this is something you can just mail to your families, and they can, like, you can take it and change it and mail it to your families, and they can print it out and use it. And if the kid doesn't like it and he tears it up, they can just print another one.
So if you'd like a copy of this, email us also, same email, info@banetwork.org, and we'll send you a copy of this. Again, feel free to edit it and change it up however you'd like, but it's really just a template to get you started.
And then just back to schedules. If you have multiple kids in the home, I would put, even if one of the kids doesn't have behavior services, doesn't have developmental disabilities.
Whoa. Oh, what? My bad. No. It's a computer went weird.
Broke it. So if you have 2, again, you have one kid that you're providing service to, you have another kid in the home, a sibling who might be a typical kid, might not have behavior problems, I would put them both on the schedule. If they're an older sibling, you want to help the parents program in as much reinforcement as possible to get the older kids helping and assisting, and if they're a teenager, just generally not causing stress. And then if it's a younger kid, if you have a younger kid who sees their older sibling getting a whole bunch of reinforcement, then the younger kid is going to have typical kid behaviors because they're mad that somebody else is getting M&Ms and they're not. So just get both kids on the schedule. If you're me, you cram it all into one page. And if you're Andrea, you put it on 2 beautiful separate pages. However you want to do it, but I really do recommend having both the kids on some type of schedule. Even if it's vastly different reinforcement systems, just have them on something.
All right, so kind of moving forward from scheduling. So again, the whole assumption here is that the parent is going to be the one who is implementing a lot of these procedures, implementing a lot of these interventions. So the one method that you could use to actually train the parents is using behavioral skills training, or BST. So telehealth has been shown to be equally as effective as in-person training for certain skills. We do have this article if you'd like access to it. So really just consider using BST via telehealth. Just to break down what behavioral skills training generally looks like, it has 3 or 4 components, depending on how you'd want to look at it. First component is some sort of instructional component. So basically, you're going to be explaining to mom or dad how to implement some certain things. So if we're talking about the preference assessment, MSWO, we're going to be talking about what the MSWO looks like, talking through the procedures, ensuring that, engaging in some interverbals and question answers, and ensuring that they actually are attending and understanding. The next step is to show them or to model what that would look like. So if we're doing it via telehealth, that would be me actually with some kind of setup in front of me with the various toys. Perhaps I recruit my significant other to help me role play it, and I'll be role playing it with another person. And then the last step would be actually role playing it with the parent, where the parent is the one who is implementing the procedure and you're providing feedback for the performance. So to actually implement BST using telehealth, you can use any sort of video conferencing software, Zoom, GoToMeeting, DoxyMe, etc., to do actually all of these components of the BST. So you can role play via some video conferencing. You can observe the parent actually implementing the procedures with a kiddo or with some other, maybe an older sibling, just to practice, and provide real-time feedback on that. You can also use email and screen sharing to provide written and visual support. So if you want to create some kind of document breakdown like the MSWO that we created, you can email that to them. You can create a PowerPoint and kind of go through it via video conferencing. Okay, so we have a question in the chat. I have thought about using my own kiddo to model. Would that be okay? Seems like the consensus is yes, especially if it's your own kiddo. It should be okay. Kiddo consent should be okay as well. I think it's okay.
I think it's probably okay. I don't have any kids, but
you can use your cats, Kasey.
I can use my cats. They're not. I was just wondering about confidentiality for the family. Are you talking about for your family or for the other family? I'm not sure I understand the question. I'm still not sure I understand the question.
So I think the question is, can you, the behavior analyst, model an MSWO with your kiddo and use that to show the parents? Is that
I think you could if it's a video. I understand what you're saying now. You're basically saying, can you live model it with your kid and the other family is watching it? I would say no, it would have to be something pre-recorded because you can't have your kid viewing whatever's going on the other side of the video camera. But pre-recording I think would be okay. However, it would be much funnier if you did it with your spouse.
That's a good question though. Yeah. Okay, wait, I'm trying to... Oh, stuffed animals, that's funny. Yeah, you could use stuffed animals, why not? Oh, that's good.
Oh, yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, for sure. I think videoing it would be helpful. And the interesting thing with videoing too is that if you're providing services for multiple individuals, and this is just something that you'd like your parents, or it's useful for a lot of parents from different families to actually implement, it would be helpful to have just one pre-recorded video with like a voiceover that you can send out to the various families and kind of get the ball rolling like that, right? So just kill a couple birds with one stone.
And that saves, I mean, not only saves you time, but also saves them time, and saves, like, if you're only approved for 1 hour of telehealth a week, you can send them these resources. You can send them the description of the skills and the instructions, and then you can also send them the video with the voiceover. They can watch it, and then you can go like on a live telehealth session and watch them role, not necessarily, I mean, they could role play it with their spouse, or they can actually, you can observe them implementing the skill with their kid.
Mm-hmm. Which, again, if you're doing it live, the beautiful thing with video is that you're able to actually provide all the in vivo feedback or the real-time feedback while they're actually doing it. So I have here in the white box, if you want to just screenshot it or something, or I can send it to you if you email me. There's different articles relating to telehealth or just delivering services remotely, or training remotely. There's just different articles about it. So here is one article where they trained up parents to implement an FA and FCT using behavioral skills training. You also have just another article on behavior, parents as behavior change agents, published in 2020, which I thought was interesting. I mean, it's so relevant right now. Also BST and telehealth. So here's discrete trial training for listener skills. So in this article, they actually trained undergraduate students, so completely untrained individuals, to implement DTT for listener receptive skills. And then just general telehealth. Here they used basically telehealth or just video conferencing to teach the other person how to detect antecedents and consequences. I know it says B's, but I meant to say consequences, C's. My bad.
Whoops.
Yeah. But yeah, so these are just some resources that if you want to check out a little bit more from that. So I think especially teaching parents it's probably something you've already done. Some of these things, especially teaching parents how to detect antecedents and consequences, but I think now more than ever, it's probably very relevant, since not only are they going to be the person to be collecting home data is now all the data, and they're also the RVT in this kind of situation. So it's important to kind of figure out different ways that you can help them develop the skills necessary to sort of maintain control of everything.
And something I love so much about parent training is they're going to be able to use this for the rest of their lives. So if you teach them how to use a stop, redirect, reinforce procedure, or you teach them how to use planned ignoring appropriately, or functional communication training, that's something that's not just relevant in the next couple months while they're responsible for full care of their child. That's going to be useful forever. Like if you teach them how to implement a token system, that's something they can use not only now, but forever, and with their other children, and potentially with their husband. Depends on what the situation is.
And their cat.
And their cat. I don't know about a token system with your cat. That would be pretty complex there, Dre.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, so if you'd like to any of these articles, also email us. I can send it out to you all. So, oops, I skipped some. Okay. So also consider having parents, if you're going to be doing parent training, also consider having the parents video themselves. So if you're not able to actually sort of watch things in real time, you're also able to have them just video you actually implementing the skills periodically, or completing the skill, again, via video conference, you're able to assess for maintenance and generalization. So just once they've acquired the skills, do it every so often, do a couple probes just to see how they're doing. Also choose a skill to target that is likely to get a high degree of buy-in from parents. This goes back to our discussion about goals in the beginning, but really choosing things that are going to be, essentially choosing things that have natural contingencies for the parent, right? So if there's a target skill that your parent really wants that child to learn, do it, because it's going to help them, because it's going to help them reduce effort in some other way, because it's going to be sort of reducing any sort of aversive situation, like loading the dishwasher, things like that. Getting parent buy-in is going to be very important. And I think now more than ever, there's probably an increased motivation to buy into these types of things. So hopefully you haven't been having too many issues with that. So for the skills that you are targeting, this is what I said before. For the skills that you are targeting with multiple clients, you can create videos modeling the appropriate procedures with your husband, with your stuffed animals, with your cat, with some kind of voiceover for parent training. So this is an article where they did that and they assessed the effectiveness of these videos, found them, they were pretty effective. So this is also another article that I can send out if you'd like.
Just a side note on having parents video themselves, just make sure whatever way they're sending you the videos is HIPAA compliant. And we could talk a little bit more about that at the end. But texting videos is not HIPAA compliant. And I know that's the parents like, oh, I'll just take a video on my iPhone and then I'll text it to you. Stop them real fast. Yeah, so just kind of be careful with the way that parents are sharing that information.
Yeah. Okay, so another thing that you can do is also just have parents run maintenance trials at home for skills that the individual has already mastered. So, all right, you're not able to perhaps continue DTT at home just because parent isn't able to actually run these sort of trials at home, but they may be able to, rather than teach new skills, run maintenance trials at home to ensure that whatever skills they have acquired aren't going to be forgotten. Because they haven't practiced them in a while. So that's something that you could do. And actually, I was talking to a friend who was going through this whole transition to telehealth, and this was something that she had suggested. She uses these website boom cards to kind of get at that same idea that you would get with DTT. So this is what it looks like. The website is wow.boomlearning.com. So I know here they're targeting math skills, but the whole idea is that you can create cards, kind of like flashcards, and of anything, right? So they don't have to be math. They could be pictures. They could be whatever. So you have an empty answer slot and multiple answer choices, and the whole idea is that you can probably just recreate these to look like match the sample kind of cards. And these are self-graded, I believe. I haven't played around too much with it, but it is self-graded, which means that it's kind of like a game that you can create independently and have parents play with it with the kid. You can sort of teach them to go through it with you, and then once you see that they've acquired it, they've mastered it, it's something that they might be able to do at home as well. Yeah, you do create all of these yourself. So I do believe that they have some that are pre-created, but to be completely honest, I don't know too much about the website, but I do think that there are some that are pre-created. I'm not sure how you would access them. You might have to buy those. But from what I understand, it does have a free version, which allows you a certain number of, yeah, okay, so there are pre-created ones and a free trial. Okay, yeah, very cool. Some great info in the chat box. Thank you guys. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so if it's something that you'd like to check out, I definitely, so especially since there's a free version, I recommend just playing around with it, seeing if it's something that you might be able to implement, and kind of just create cards with images, words, symbols, anything that would be relevant that the parent can use at home to train different skills.
And it's also because it's something that you're able to make and kind of coach the parents through. It's a lot lower response effort for the parents than having to create materials from whatever they have at home and then implement the trials.
Mm-hmm. Some alternatives I have heard of is using like the whiteboard function on Zoom to kind of do similar things, to draw out similar things. But I think the benefit to using something like boom cards or some alternative is that it does record correct responding, right? So that's what it means by self-graded. So basically you can see whether the kiddo's there, they're dragging it. I think it's iPad accessible too. They're dragging it onto the correct slot. You are able to see that. So there's that aspect to it, as opposed to if you were just doing like a Zoom whiteboard kind of teleconference, you can't see necessarily what the individual is doing. So some benefits there. So here is our second CEU keyword, sunflower. So write that one down.
That one's not edible.
I mean, the seeds are.
Depends how long we're locked in our house and not allowed to go to the grocery store.
Yeah. So I guess since we're at the halfway, yeah, there you go, seeds are. So I guess since we're at the halfway point, if you all want to take like a quick couple-minute break to like, I don't know, use the restroom or get some water, I think now's a good time to do that. You want to do that, Case?
Yeah, we can take a couple minutes. Just if your sound is on, don't take us with you.
Yeah, and be careful with that. I know we've all seen like the
Webcam
horror videos on social media.
Okay, so let's just take like 3 minutes. So come back at like 3:03.
Perfect. All right. Has it been 3 minutes?
It has been 2 minutes.
Okay. I should have used my Skinner mug. I swear, I feel like everyone has that mug.
All right, now it's been 3 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, the black one. The ABAI one. I try to convince myself that every time I sip from it, I'm like sipping from his brain, you know? Like I'm hoping I'll just absorb some wisdom. I'm like, okay, help me today.
I want to say drinking in his knowledge and maybe not sipping from his brain.
True. Oh, that's funny. Actually, I think the day that I took my qualifying exams, I think I was sipping from his
cup
mug. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I think we're okay?
Yep, I think so.
Okay, cool. Okay, so now we're going to talk a bit about trying to, if you do see the occurrence of some problem behavior, that maybe it's new problem behavior that you haven't seen before, or maybe functions have changed with the transition of everything. Whatever the case may be, you're trying to see if you can conduct some kind of FA via telehealth. So Wacker et al. 2013, they actually conducted a series of FAs via telehealth with the parents actually implementing the procedures. So what they did was, here, let me actually do these things. So what they actually did was they had parent assistants. They trained parents assistants, and they had parents go to some center to train, learn, and actually implement the procedures. So these weren't implemented at home; they were implemented at some center. But the entire training process for the parent was online, so it was via telehealth. So parents were given some sort of manual where they were able to read through the whole procedures. They had I think it was a 1 hour long session with the parent, again, walking through all the procedures, and then they were implementing the procedures with the kiddo via video conferencing live with live feedback from the behavior analyst with parent assistants. So the parent assistants, they weren't actually trained RBTs or anything like that. They were untrained individuals that they specifically trained just for these purposes. So the behavior analyst met separately with these individuals for about 1 hour to, again, train them up on the procedures and then essentially just help the parent implement the FA. So it was kind of tedious, I think, the whole procedures. It may not be something that you'd be able to implement right now, but I think there are some things that you can sort of expand upon or perhaps eliminate and kind of just adjust to your own needs. They were able to obtain high measures of procedural integrity with these. So parents were about 98% accurate with all of these things. So it was pretty effective in getting parents to appropriately implement an FA, which is pretty cool. And they actually were able to, with a follow-up study, conduct FCT via telehealth with the same group of participants and also showed good levels of behavior reduction. So it was effective at identifying function and later on developing function-based treatment. So again, the question is, was it very practical, especially with the parent assistance involved? It may not necessarily be super practical, but I do think that there may be some adjustments that you can make to kind of help out. So one, for instance, is that you could implement trial-based FAs rather than trying to run a full FA. At least with a trial-based, you'd be able to, for instance, focus on 1 or 2 functions every day, every meeting. If you're able to meet with your parent like a couple times a week or something, every time you meet, let's say, all right, we're gonna go through the attention and escape function today. So this is what you have to do for attention. You probe out a couple trials for that. This is what you have, and then you go through, this is what you should do for escape, probe out a couple trials like that, and sort of separating it out instead of trying to teach parents this whole one cohesive procedure that they have to implement. The other thing too, sort of along the lines of everything else we've discussed so far, if it is something that you want to deliver, we do, or something you do want to implement, we do suggest delivering TAs for these. The Wacker et al. Study, they did deliver,
Task analysis.
Task analyses, yeah.
I didn't know what TAs was when she put it on the thing.
Oh, my bad. Task analyses. So the Wacker et al. Study, they did give the parents a manual. They gave them a 16-page manual to implement the procedures that went through everything, went through the sort of idea behind the functional analysis and each of the conditions. I think 16 pages may be kind of much to expect from a parent to read through. I mean, sometimes it's hard enough to get parents to read like 2 pages of something. So I do suggest breaking it down much more simply will be helpful. I mean, you may get a very like overzealous parent that's willing, like, gun ho, let's do this. But kind of just err on the conservative side and assume the worst, I guess.
Okay, so if a functional analysis is not an option, what else can you do? I mean, depending on the kid, completing a functional analysis, prompting and reinforcing behavior problems may not be the best thing to do in a global pandemic. So what else? Obviously, doing an FA would be the gold standard, but if we can't do that, what else can we do? Well, I mean, there's plenty of other functional behavior assessment methods, indirect and direct. Some indirect methods that are really easy to do over telehealth are just parent interviews. Having the parents do a 7-day behavior journal. So pretty much anytime a behavior occurs, having them write down everything they can remember that happened before and everything that they did after. They may or may not be accurate and honest, but it's better than nothing. Train the parents to collect ABC data. I found that the best option is if you have done like a parent interview or maybe a behavior journal, looking at what the most frequent antecedents and consequences are and just making them a check sheet. So they don't have to write in what the antecedent is, write in the behavior, write in the consequences, just have it be a check sheet. What came before? Placed a demand. What was the behavior? Bit self. What happened after? Provided attention, blah, 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 blah. And then of course also leaving extra lines so they can write if something that's not on your check sheet occurred. But they're much more likely to just do a simple check sheet than they are to stand there and fill this out after they've just dealt with a 1-hour behavior problem. I've especially found that with kids with PWS because they can throw a serious tantrum and it can be a 2-hour tantrum. And by the end, the parents are not going to fill out your ABC data sheet. Have the parents mark the occurrences of the behaviors on the daily schedule. So if you have already given them a schedule that's broken down into time periods, you can just tell them, put an X mark where it occurred on the schedule, because that gives you an idea. Okay, well, at bath time, we've had 7 behaviors this week, or after dinner, we've had 7 behaviors this week. And then you can use a parent interview to go in and find out a little bit more information on what exactly is going on in that time period that is predisposing the behavior problems. And then you can always do a FAST or a QABF. They're not really my favorite, but it's a good option when you have limited time. And then direct methods, I'm sure you guys can kind of sort this out already. First thing would be to have the parents video the behavior problems. That is a really, really easy thing to do, especially if it's not a behavior problem where the kid is hurting themselves or others. Maybe it's a tantrum, they're flinging themselves on the floor. You can have the parents just put the iPhone down somewhere where they can video, and then you can watch the behavior and you can watch how the parent's responding and you can give feedback based on that. Also, live telehealth sessions. Maybe you have already used your daily schedule and you've noticed that every day for the past 4 days, we're having behavior problems in the hour between 12 and 1 p.m. That's a really good time to schedule your telehealth session. And you can plan in advance with the parents, maybe where you can set up the laptop so that it's causing like minimal reactivity. You can even have them leave it out there for a couple days or place it there periodically so that the kids can kind of habituate. And then you can have them set up the webcam, black the screen, and you mute yourself so that nobody can tell you're watching except for the little creepy green dot or red dot that appears on your laptop. And then you can pretty much observe what's going on. And the great part about that is that you can potentially catch the antecedents. So if you just say, hey, we know behavior problems usually start at 1, put me on at 12:45, just let me watch everything that's happening, you can potentially sort out what the antecedents are. Whereas if the parent's just videoing the behavior, you're not necessarily able to capture that. The downside is the behavior may not occur. So you might sit there for an hour staring at these people's lives and nothing might happen. But if you are having a lot of behavior problems in a specified period of time, it's a good option. I really do recommend making sure you strategize with the family in advance as far as where you're going to put the laptop, because you want to make sure wherever they put it, you can see. And the more surface area you can see, the better. Like if you can see 2 rooms or you can see the entire living room, the more information you're going to be able to gather and the less likely you have to prompt the parent to move the laptop mid-behavior so you can see.
So kind of a little bit more on reactivity. So Faith in the chat box did bring up a good point. So one way to avoid reactivity is to have a device where it's recording one way, where you're not actually showing the video. So with the laptop, you have the laptop open, and even if it's a black screen or anything like that, it's still perhaps a stimulus that's not as naturally occurring compared to other stimuli. So that's something to consider. Here are a few other considerations for addressing reactivity. So before the actual session, like Kasey mentioned, you can allow some time for habituation. So whatever device parent does decide to use for that moment, make sure that it's set up in there just occasionally. They don't even actually have to be recording anything at the moment, just having it set up there perhaps a couple days before at random times throughout the day, just so that the kiddo habituates to that device that's placed there. Also, of course, have the parent place the laptop or whatever device in some inconspicuous location. So, you know, if problem behavior with kiddo occurs while they're trying to work on coloring sheets at the table, perhaps it's not a good choice to actually put the laptop on the table right in front of them, or iPad or whatever it is. Could be something else. Another consideration with that actually is if, for instance, the iPad is a high preferred item for the kiddo, and iPad is the method of recording, that might not work out so well. So maybe try just using something else. Maybe you can, if they just have like an old cruddy webcam that they don't really care about, maybe just putting that in a corner, something that it's just not as, it's something that's just not as preferred for the kiddo. So during the observation periods themselves, of course, mute yourself, turn off your video, and ensure that nothing's going on. But also it could be helpful maybe if parents have ear pods or something like that. What are they called? AirPods? Yeah, AirPods. If I'm not an Apple user, I'm sorry guys. So maybe they have those in, and you can actually provide feedback in real time without the kiddo or anyone else hearing, right? So if you have a video set up, and they have the audios in, and they're actually going through and implementing whatever sort of procedure it is that you're working on, you're able to provide the feedback without having the parent stop the session, and actually help if problem behavior starts to happen. You can help redirect them, help guide them for that stop and redirect procedure, or whatever it could be.
And it doesn't necessarily, like, you wouldn't necessarily have to have the AirPods hooked up to the laptop. So you can have them streaming video from the laptop on something like doxy.me or one of the other HIPAA compliant servers, and you can just have them call you with their cell phone, and they can connect their AirPods to the cell phone, and you can provide feedback that way. Because sometimes with the AirPods, if you move too far away from the computer, it makes this really horrible noise. So you can just have them put their cell phone in their back pocket, put the AirPod in their ear, and it's a really good way, especially if you have a kid that can engage in SIB or engage in aggression, or if you know some very clear precursors for something like property destruction or elopement, you really need to have that that verbal communication with the parent. And of course, if they don't have a way, like AirPods are an option to do that, you can just have it where they set up the video and they make the screen black. However, if you unmute yourself, you can talk to them. That way, if there's an emergency, you can say, hey, this is a precursor for elopement, you need to go in response block or something like that. But obviously, if you can make it covert, that's better than, because then of course you've just increased the reactivity for the next session, because the kid's aware that something's going on with that laptop, and then it's going to become very interesting.
For sure. So kind of like we mentioned before, some alternatives, if reactivity is just has become too much of an issue, there was an accident and something like that happened where now there's just the laptop or recording device is now an SD for something. There are, of course, alternatives. So you can have parents collect ABC data or have parents send pictures and videos, just depending on what your situation is.
Okay, so we talked a little bit before about just general behavior control. And of course, we recommend a combination, especially in this type of situation, of just some type of general behavior control strategy, as well as implementing a function-based treatment. The benefit of something like a DRO is it works really fast, even if you don't know the function. So you can get something in place really quickly. But then, of course, we want to teach a functionally equivalent alternative. So Dre mentioned this article already. But I really recommend reading this Wacker et al. 2013. There's two articles. One is where they teach the parents to implement the FA. And then the second one is where they teach the parents to implement the functional communication training. And it is a really good article, and it gives pretty much step-by-step. If you wanted to do this with one of your families, it tells you exactly how to do this. So again, if you want to email us, please email us and we'll share the information with you. So essentially what the authors did is they implemented FCT over telehealth, and it was with 17 children with ASD. One aspect that I like is they only required 1 hour remote sessions. So they taught the parents the skills. They asked them to rehearse them for a specified period of time per week. I can't remember exactly what it was, but the actual telehealth sessions were only 1 hour per week. They showed a 93.5% reduction in problem behavior, which is pretty remarkable. And I believe that they compared that to an article that they had done previously where they had done in-person training with parents and taught them how to implement FCT. And in that article, they had a 94% reduction in problem behavior. So pretty much comparable telehealth versus in-person training, which I think is really great. And then the parents rated the intervention as highly acceptable, which I thought was also very important because that has to be a concern within this time period and level of stress. So I really think FCT via telehealth is a great function-based and evidence-based option. I'm not really going to go through the article and the procedures with you because we don't have too much more time. However, we can share this information with you, and it really does just break it down step by step. It's a really great article.
Is this me?
I think so.
Oh, okay.
It could be me if you want.
That's okay. So if you do decide to train up any skills, any new skills that the individual may not have, of course, be cautious, right? So only push for procedures and protocols that the family can handle. So you have to take the entire situation into context, right? So the families are now home 24/7. So like I mentioned before, this could be the silver lining. So because they're home, this could be a great time to actually target home relevant skills. Could be meal preparation, could be helping out with the dishes, could be feeding the cat, whatever it could be, just any sort of home relevant skills that'll be beneficial for their own independence, but also will just help out the parents. So the whole idea is here, of course, you're increasing independence and targeting self-care skills. So good skills acquisition goal that also helps relieve the burden from the parents. So just reiterating that the whole idea is take advantage of this opportunity to target skills that you may not have been able to before, because now they're just 100 times more relevant than they ever have been. You can also, of course, teach functional skills that could replace problem behavior, right? So there is high MO there to actually replace that problem behavior from that parent's perspective, right? Just ease their time, but also kiddo's perspective. If we're going to be in quarantine for a couple months, it does make sense to try to target something, especially problem behavior that's only relevant at the home. Maybe it's not a problem behavior that you saw at the clinic or wherever else that you may have been intervening. And then, so for, so some examples there, like Kasey mentioned before, FCT, you can also target leisure skills. Since, let's say you're preparing a schedule, you've scheduled in leisure skill time, this is a good opportunity to try to find some kind of replacement behaviors that can, or some activities that could be antecedents. Ooh, laptop's running out of battery, hold up. My bad. Target leisure skills. This is actually an interesting point of topic that I've discussed with researchers over at NEC at one point, that leisure skill acquisition isn't necessarily something that you sort of conventionally think of as a skill that needs to be acquired. But if you really think about trying to increase independence and fill up your time and schedule, it's a very socially relevant and appropriate skill to have, especially if you have older kids and it's sort of getting to the time where they have to entertain themselves. You don't want a parent to always have to be entertaining the kiddo. So if there's some sort of activity that they can slowly learn to do on their own, that can be considered within this general realm of leisure skills, I think that would be really important and socially relevant at this time. And as well, just to add to that, is social skills with siblings. So if they do have any brothers or sisters or any other family members around, this is a good opportunity to try to target social skills with the siblings, which of course increases independence for the kiddos and the clients, but also just helps parents out, right? Gives them, if you know that kiddo is playing with brother or sister and you have those 30 minutes or however much to meal prep or whatever it is that you need to do. And for the individuals, your clients that do have the skills to interact with technology, either independently or with parent guidance, again, Boom could be an option, right? It's another way to start targeting skills with the help of some other sort of technology that's pretty low response effort for parents, I think, at the end of the day.
And also just taking into account that any leisure skills, or pretty much anytime you're training appropriate play or anything with siblings, because we don't have friends now, so we have to make do with our siblings. That's all going to compete with behavior problems. So anything, especially if you have automatically reinforced behavior problems, teaching these skills so that kids can find reinforcement in other ways that don't include the parents, that don't include necessarily interacting with technology, and that don't include doing any repetitive automatically reinforced behaviors.
So actually, another note on the social skills thing, I have heard of some behavior analysts for whom telehealth was approved for social skills. I've heard both. I've heard telehealth not approved for social skills or social group. I have heard that it has been approved, so depends on your own situation. But if you do have sort of higher functioning individuals, it's socially appropriate to continue developing these social skills via telehealth, right? I personally, I have now increased my hanging out time with friends just via, going on WhatsApp or Zoom or whatever it may be, hanging out with friends and just sort of teaching and developing these skills, these social skills on an online platform is very relevant at this time. Yeah, so it is for some carriers for sure. It's a socially appropriate and socially relevant skill right now, and it does, again, increase independence, self-care skills, and it helps out parents at the end of the day. So here's our last CEU keyword, lettuce. Kasey was making a salad with lettuce, sunflower seeds, and peppers. Just remember that, that sentence when you're going through the CEU quiz.
All right. Okay, so here we have some resources for you. We have been trying to review as much information as possible so we can bring it all to you. However, if you go on YouTube, you can look up pretty much activities of daily living skills and how to train those, how-to videos for both the parents and the clients. So if you don't have time to create your own videos, there may be some resources there. We mentioned this already, the Daily BA video on telehealth with Tina Patterson has a lot of really good information, and she gives a lot of resources, especially regarding what is HIPAA compliant, what is not HIPAA compliant, what your consent needs to look like, more on the practical side of implementation. And then, I don't know what these we know what boom cards are. What is a Ruby?
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, quickly before that. So with the YouTube videos, I did go on and I was looking on like how-to training videos and stuff. You have all sorts of videos out there. Some actually cartoon drawn, some with people. There's sort of different research regarding whether it matters that the person who's doing the video modeling is actually a person, or if they're drawn or anything like that. But I think really it comes down to the skill level of the imitator, right? So if we're thinking of imitation. But there are a lot of how-to training videos out there for different sort of basic living skills, independent living skills. But I do recommend that you check the video in full before you actually send it to the parent. I know it's a basic thing, but it definitely needs to be said. There are some weird videos out there. So definitely make sure to check out the videos before you send them out to the parent. And I'm trying to paste this link, this daily BA video onto the chat, but I can't figure it out. So maybe Kasey, you could paste it into the chat. But they do provide some information on tech and insurance, and it was pretty good. I did enjoy it. The Ruby Parent Training Manuals is a resource that I actually got from that video. And what it is, it's a Ruby Network is a clinic organization, I believe, and they created, actually I'm not entirely sure about that sentence, but they did create a series of parent training manuals, both in English and in Spanish, which I thought was very useful, that kind of go through different skills that might be relevant in this telehealth time. Chat. Oh, awesome. Awesome. Okay. And then of course, the last website is the Boom Learning Cards.
Okay, so we are going to open it up for questions in just a minute, but I just wanted to just kind of explain a little more about what the BA network is. So essentially what we are creating is we are having somebody build a platform that's going to be a combination of a forum that's going to be broken down per subject. So it's going to be much easier for you to go and find, like, for example, if you wanted information on telehealth, you can go to the telehealth platform and look at all the discussion there. And so it's going to be a combination of the forum. The benefits of the forum is that everybody's going to be required to sign up, and you're going to be required to give some information on your background. So when somebody responds to you, you have a little bit of information on kind of what their work experience is, if they have done any research, what their research is in, and you can choose to value the responses you get according to the person's experience. So we really like the idea of kind of being able to vet the responses so you know the quality of what you're getting. What we also are going to be offering is free CE events every month. And those are really meant to be conversation starters. So we're trying to offer CE events that are really generated by topics that BA Network users are interested in. So everybody's going to have the opportunity to submit CE topics, whatever is the most interesting and exciting, or just something that everybody feels that maybe they want to learn more about, have a skill deficit in, and we really want that to be able to bring people together so that everybody can learn from each other, and as well as the research or whatever guests we have on. And then we really just want it to be a safe space for people to ask questions. So I feel sometimes like if maybe you're working with a new client group, like a new client that you've never worked with this disability or this behavior before, and you post a question on Facebook and people just eat you alive because they tell you that you should know this and blah, blah, blah. So we really want to create a resource for behavior analysts where you can go and you can ask the question that you might feel like is a stupid question, and you're not going to get blown off, and you're not going to get reamed on Facebook for not knowing what you're talking about. But you're actually going to get really useful information and really productive resources, and you're going to be able to learn from that. So that's a little.
Sorry, just to add to that too, I think it's really relevant, especially so we all know that the field is increasing probably exponentially. We're having a lot of behavior analysts. The majority of behavior analysts are now certified at the master's level, been practicing for 5 years or less. And you have a lot of behavior analysts who are now practicing in the community, not necessarily center-based. And for people who have experience in a center, you know that that's a great way to learn and apply the skills that you've acquired in your behavior analytic program. So for people like this who haven't had the ability to actually practice these things before being sort of thrown out into the wolves, I think it's an incredible resource and useful resource. So now you actually have people you can talk to. You're a new behavior analyst, or maybe you've been practicing a few years. You're now out in the community. You don't really have a good support system or supervisor to be able to ask questions to. This is a platform where you'd be able to ask questions safely and just trust that you'd be able to find the answers that you need. On the flip side, no, it's okay. On the flip side, if you have been practicing and now you're switching to a new area, or you just got a new case and they're exhibiting some problem behavior or some target behavior that you haven't had some experience with, perhaps some sexual behavior, having this kind of platform, you'd be able to go on, you'd be able to search up sexual behavior and find all the discussions that have been there so far, read up some backgrounds and find some resources, but also post any new questions if you do have anything that hasn't been answered already.
So you can email us for more information, or you can go to www.banetwork.org. And if you just plug your email in there, we will email you personally. I've been sending a lot of emails. And so our platform is in the process of being built. We are hoping to do a soft launch towards the end of April and have it open for everybody in May. And we're going to be providing all of our continuing education credits and all of our resources for free until this global pandemic is over, because this is crazy. So we really hope you come and sign up. And that's the end of my soapbox lecture.
Definitely. And I'm kind of just reading a little bit in the chat what people are saying. Like Kimberly was saying, it's so true. I've seen some of the vitriol that's on like social media platforms. Someone asks a simple question and people just attack them, like completely attack them. And like I guess I understand to some extent the frustration that that person probably hasn't you know, they should have known the answer to that and they don't know it. But if you're really thinking about just the development of their own skills, the development of the field, you don't want to punish question asking. That's exactly what you're doing when you answer like that. You want to, as much as it's frustrating that they don't know it, I prefer people to ask the question and answer it rather than just being punished for asking in the first place. So, sorry, so if you have any other questions, for sure let us know. And actually we'll open up, because we still have some time, we'll open up the space for questions now relating to telehealth, relating to BA Network, relating to anything like that.
And we will, every question is an important question. We won't do a Facebook.
I swear.
Someone please talk.
Let me see. Sorry, I have to catch up. Thank you. Oh, I'm so glad you guys like it. Definitely. I'm really happy that people are enthusiastic about this sort of idea.
Okay, let's see. Okay, so somebody asked, how much telehealth did you provide prior to COVID shutting everything down? So I actually have been doing telehealth with kids with PWS for, I don't know, what, year and a half now? Something like that, prior to COVID, because kids with Prader-Willi syndrome, number one, tend not to qualify for behavior services because the insurance companies like to say it's only for autism, and also because they tend to be all over the world. So it's not like there's a cluster of kids that I can serve where I am in Pompano Beach. So I work with families pretty much internationally. So I've been doing it for a while. Can we all share activity ideas for telehealth? You guys can talk if you want to. You don't have to be muted.
No, I think what we can do, depending on the time, is if we answer a couple questions and then we can do some breakout sessions where we're in smaller groups and then you can like bounce around ideas, or we can bounce our ideas in public, whatever you guys prefer.
So somebody asked, what do you use for parents to submit videos that's compliant? I personally use doxy.me. I believe you can send videos directly through doxy.me. However, you can also have them email it and password protect it. That's completely fine. Like they can email it with a password and then call you with the password. WhatsApp is also encrypted. So you can, WhatsApp's really an easy one because it's kind of like text messaging and they can just send it that way. Just make sure that your phone or your WhatsApp account or whatever it is password protected. So like if your kid picked up your phone, they're not going to see a video of one of your clients.
Yeah, so you can make the application itself, like, so you can password protect your phone, but that you can password protect the app itself so that every time you open it, you have to put in your password. And if there, I'm 100% certain that there's other services out there that you could use. The best way to figure out is just Google that service. Like if you're unsure whether DoxyMe has encryption for messages or anything, just Google like DoxyMe encryption. We know that it's encrypted, but just as an example.
Okay, so somebody said that they're finding it difficult to train people or RBTs. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit? Like what specifically are you having difficulty with? Because maybe we can give some resources or everybody can shout out their ideas, even though nobody seems to want to talk.
Website.
Okay, somebody said there's also a website, Send Safely, that does cloud storage and is HIPAA compliant. That's $60 a month. Somebody else said box.com. Hi, Leanne.
And PMD for videos. Google Drive through G Suite. Yeah, if you do have some.
Is HIPAA compliant through G Suite if you have a specific agreement. So there's an additional document you have to go in and sign to make sure it's HIPAA compliant.
Is it the business associates agreement? I think probably that. Yeah, BAA.
Yeah. The only issue with that is you would have to be very careful. Like you would have to have a folder specifically for that family and make sure they can't get in and access anything else, like just password protected, or be super careful.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. A lot of good ideas.
Leanne says she has a file for activities she can send out. Leanne is awesome. Email her. Okay, so question. We still have a little bit of time. We have the option where we can split everybody up into smaller groups and you can kind of discuss and ask your questions there. So if you guys want to do that, I guess just say me in the chat box so we know if people are interested in that, or if all your questions are answered, that's also fine.
The whole idea with the breakout sessions is that you can get into smaller groups, probably like 3 or 4 people, and be able to provide more specific context. Like, okay, I'm practicing, I have this kiddo, they're, you know, exhibiting this target, I don't really know how to do this. It's just sort of to get like individualized attention for these things. So just put meat in the box. All right, we got some on board. Oh, good question.
Yeah, it would be the equivalent of 2 50-minute presentations. So is that an hour and 40 minutes? Yes,
Yeah, it is. Yeah, good point, actually.
Okay, so let's do this. Whoever has all the information they want, you can, I think it's 3:41, so I think you can head out if you want. And whoever wants to stay and talk, just stay, and we can unmute our mics and just have a discussion section here. Is that fine, Aaron? Boss?
I'm trying not to be like loud and eat.
No, come be loud.
Oh
What's
gosh,
up, boss?
no,
What are
I have
you
like crackers in my mouth. No, that's fine. Sorry. Yeah, that works for me. That's good. I will email out the Google form. There was something wrong with the one that I had set up. So I'm going to recreate it and then I'll email it out to everybody afterwards. I usually put it in the chat box, but that's my only, for people who want to go ahead and go, that's fine. I will go ahead and stop recording. I think that'll be okay. Is that good?
And yeah, email us. Dre said that in the chat, but email us if you have any questions or you want resources or pretty much anything. We're all stuck in our houses and we love to talk to people.
And you can also, if you're interested in signing up, sign up on the website for banetwork.org.
That too.
Thank you, everyone. I hope that it was helpful. I really do hope that we were able to sort of answer some of your questions or at least provide examples as to how you could apply these things.
Not just annoy you for an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, it was really helpful. One of the questions I have is,